Welcome, everybody. So we've got the DeFi Kingdoms team here with Risen and Bolin, here to share some insight with the Web3 gaming world with us. So we've got an action-packed session here, an action-packed fireside chat for you guys with a ton of heavy-hitting questions that both are, very beginner friendly, as well as some more advanced questions that I'm really excited to dive into, which I hope will give you guys a little bit of insight into what it's like to work inside of a crypto gaming company, if you want to call it a company. It could be a DAO, right? And also a little bit of insight into where the direction of the Web3 gaming world is really headed, the complications that they've seen in the process, and really want to just hear more about their experiences, because it's a very unique experience to have in this world so far, because Web3 gaming is brand new, right? So, anyways, without any further ado, me and my business partner Yoni are excited to welcome you guys, Risen and Bolin. So, how you guys doing today?
Hey, how's it going? You
Doing
talking
well.
about a unique experience. We got we got sucked into this world through a D&D campaign. So you can't get much more unique than that, which
As
is
in
actually where
Dungeons and
both
Dragons.
Yep.
yeah, which
Okay,
is where both of our handles have come from, were D&D campaigns that we've had.
Yep.
Um, which
interesting.
is our nice little
Okay,
homage to the start of our diving into this world.
okay. So, I kind of want to hear more about that. That actually is the second question that I have here. The first one is I want to, before we dive into that, I want to hear, like, what is DeFi Kingdoms from your guys' perspective? How would you explain it to somebody that is entering to this Web3 world?
So DeFi Kingdoms is a cross-chain GameFi project using 90s, early 2000s nostalgic pixel art for everything. But basically, it is a way to interact and have all of your DeFi experiences within a game. So we have decks, we have liquidity pools, we have NFTs, but our NFTs are our heroes, which are how you actually play our game. And so you send your hero out questing, and they return with loot and rewards. So it's essentially a way to kind of bridge the gap between traditional gaming and DeFi and crypto aspects, and be able to kind of bring those together so that you can play a game just like you have for, theoretically your entire life if you're a gamer, but still get the investment and financial side of crypto while you're at it.
And my
Okay.
2 cents to that would be the fact that everything that you could possibly do in the DeFi world, we've integrated to try and make it as gamified as possible, right? So our goal is to truly give that unique game experience where you feel like you are in the game, you're not feeling pulled aside like, oh, here's this Web 2 cover over, a Dex. We don't want people having to jump to another screen or another browser. So even the companies and the partners we work with, we integrate into the game. But what I think gets most exciting about like what we're truly doing, if you think about where all this is going, the idea of grinding on World of Warcraft for years into a character and then not having any real value come out of it other than your own hard work. uh, Old school, if you go even further than that, RuneScape, we've applied actual value and earning, and something that you can feel like your time invested in a game is actually producing value in your life besides just the pure entertainment side. But a lot of what we're doing is solving for a lot of problems that is going to open the door to a lot of different games that are going to be capable on the blockchain in the future. And that's kind of like the most exciting thing about us. And through this whole process is literally inventing ways to figure out problems for how do you actually make a game work on the blockchain? Am I just going to hit enter transactions, or how can we actually produce this to an entertaining game?
Hmm. So one thing that I noticed that was interesting about DeFi Kingdoms, so for starters, we actually used to, teach our students about DeFi Kingdoms last year. We were getting them into the seed boxes for the liquidity pool mining to earn like the harmony with Jewel to put those together to all that, and it was also a cool way for them to kind of get introduced into the idea of bridging as well. And then they had like that visualization of you go to the port and then you go onto that ship and then you go to a new place. Like it kind of like helps to visualize the whole experience, which we thought was really cool. Um, and there's one thing I noticed though, is that it seemed like instead of building the game to be a game, it was built more for a economic incentive so that people will the whole marketing goal is what this is from my perspective. The marketing goal was let's bring people into our game because they see the potential that they can use it in a way to earn income, and that will increase the total amount of users and active wallets. And then we'll add the actual playing fun aspect of the game after that. So I think that, and that's from my perspective, what I kind of saw. Can you guys talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit and let me know kind of like what went into that decision and if, that is the overall strategy that you guys were going after?
Yeah, I would say that's generally correct. As an evaluation. But the biggest thing of it, and like a lot of the reasoning behind it, is if you look at game development as a process, generally speaking, before we've even heard the title of a game, it's had 2 to 3 years of development. Then you start hearing the title, and there's another 6 months of development, and then 6 months later, the game actually comes out. We didn't have that. So that was a lot of it is, launch with the DeFi aspects that people are already looking for, but make them more user friendly, make them more fun. That brings people in. That also brings, active users and funding, which we can then use to
There's
actually
runway.
have the game development. So rather than saying, okay, we're going to set aside $2 million that we don't have, and in the next 18 months to develop this game, and then we'll release as a game. It was, let's introduce the DeFi aspects now and use that as a kind of crowdsourcing to actually have the development of the game, which will then integrate those DeFi aspects. But especially with DeFi summer, it was definitely the time to start making moves. And so, even just having a DEX and liquidity pools that are attractive, like visually, is such a
Good
step up
music in
from
the
so many other
background.
options.
Like there are so many things that we simply did that came from a lot of our team were in some form of crypto personally, but they come from design, music, game development, all these different backgrounds. And it wasn't hard to view better ways to do it. But I will say something that I think gets overlooked slightly is since literally day one, since they could start first talking about it, they've thought about and kept in mind with every single decision trying to grow a healthy in-game economy, because when during any video game, whether it be on the blockchain or not, that is something that matters as far as keeping the game entertaining and fun and rewarding, is not flooding the market with too many items, not making something too rare or too popular or whatever it may be. And that's something that Bullon has had a lot of feedback, and we've listened to the community through the whole design process, which has made a very interesting way of developing a game, because you have people that are invested in the IP before the IP is attached to anything's physical. And it's just been absolutely insane from that perspective. But as we come out and we develop more features for the game, PvP and other things that we are looking to do, uh, you will start to see the total picture come together, and it'll make looking back on it a lot easier. It'll make a lot of the initial choices make more sense as
Yeah,
more of the picture comes across.
definitely. So like what you said with trying to make a a more sustainable game, like this is we are so early in this kind of market, and when it comes to gaming, originally started as a play to earn, right? Now they're shifting to play and earn. So it's hard to balance tokenomics with a game that is in a market that's really untested, and it's a brand new market, right? So it's you kind of have to just keep growing and then adjusting as you grow, and figure out what works and figure out what doesn't. But I do like what you said, because the with combining different elements, like the music, like it's like really charming music. When you go in there, you just feel relaxed and like you're on an adventure. Like you guys brought like a gamified DeFi experience where it's not just boring old Uniswap. You have a world where you can go to the shop, right? Where you can swap something, or you can buy an NFT here and whatnot, and has a little storytelling in it. So it made it a lot more attractive for people, which ultimately, was successful upon launch when it boarded so many users, because they thought this was a more fun way to do crypto, right? So I think that's what DeFi Kingdoms really initially kickstarted, in my opinion, was like as a pioneer in that. And that's why we incorporated it initially with our students, because we thought they would have fun trying to learn DeFi for the first time that way.
which
It's
is
also a lot less intimidating.
yeah.
You're not just looking at a screen with 32 charts on it, trying to figure out what all the charts mean. It's so much more friendly, and a lot easier to kind of start getting into and explore. Whereas, most of the time you go to a chart and like that's it. There's just a chart, and it's like we'll figure it out from here. Oh no.
It's still a lot, even being in this world. Like, from our perspective, we've been in this world for a while now, and it's still, there's plenty of things that we talk to certain people, or run into certain things, and they still feel very much over our head. And looking back, all of this did at some point for all of us. Everybody that's in this was a pioneer of some kind at some point. So we are anticipating a lot of where the market and the industry is going to be long term. And I think that the people are going to want this kind of interaction. It's just a matter of someone's got to figure out all this stuff ahead of time. And we have the most amazing community that has stuck with us. And a big part of that is things like Bolon hosts, for example, an AMA literally every single week. We give people updates, we open ourselves to questions, we explain everything that we're doing. We've been as transparent as we possibly can be to show where we are in the development of the game, where we want to be, where we are trying to get to. And I'm very thankful for our community sticking with us through all of this, and I can't wait to see what they think of what comes out next. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I think this resonates with many communities in this current market. Once everything we're down 90%, 99% across the entire markets, right? The communities that remain now are the ones that aren't fixated on the price, at least on the short term price, right? See things fundamentally, what they bring, what value they bring, and they choose to stick to it is because they ultimately have conviction in that project, right? And usually these are community members that have done their research, are much more smarter or more experienced, or are willing to take the time to learn about a certain protocol. And usually what we've seen historically is like these are the members that have stuck through such harsh markets, that end up getting the best benefits, right? Whether it's becoming a builder, or a successful investor, or just onboarding people in general.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
I wanted to real quick kind of backtrack a little bit. So, because I forgot to completely introduce you guys effectively. So, Risen, you're head of business development at DeFi Kingdoms, correct?
No,
No,
no.
you're in business development, right?
Sort of. So I I have worn so many hats, just like anybody else that works for any project of any level. It's really a matter of boats on fire, who has a bucket, is a lot of how situations come about. So I was originally brought on to do the social media.
Okay.
I started with the social media. got our Twitter up to over 100,000 people. Our, Bolon is the head of our community as large. He has new title and whatnot now, but between the two of us, we drove, with the help of other people, of course, not trying to cut anybody out, but we drove a lot of that initial excitement and growth of keeping everybody excited and happy and involved in the community. And it was absolutely the most fun time of my entire life. And then I started being on the social media side, started being involved in more of the outside marketing, which then went into events, which then led into obviously a lot of the business development things. I'm generally a lot of the first person that a lot of people meet or talk to. Between me and Bolon are usually the first faces people see when they show up and meet us in person. Um, Currently, our president, Dreamer, is the head of our business development. Whenever we're at an event or in live at a place, a lot of the times the first communications are going to be through me. I pass that along. And a lot of what I do now is more on the customer or the
Player.
engagement side. um, but I still do, so I do streams, I do some work on the social media, contests, giveaways, community engagement across the board. I still do events, I still do business connections, pretty much everything except art and actual talented coding.
So you're like DFK's Swiss Army knife.
I between the two of us, Bolon and me have worked together for almost a long time.
Long time.
Longer than we'd like to admit. So we have been working together for so long in so many different jobs that we tend to solve much larger issues by splitting them between us and covering all ends. So there's pretty much nothing that we've done that each other hasn't been involved in or had to help each other out with. But yeah, that's been our role since day one is, hey, we're trying to build these things need to be figured out. Figure it out. Is that a pretty good description? That's the best I could come up with. If you ask me what my actual job title is, I would have no clue how to actually answer that question. It depends on what day.
Doesn't really matter. A title doesn't. It's just about what you do
doesn't.
for the company. Yeah, it really
No,
does.
at the end of the day, I know who I need to talk to, where the talent is, you know. But just like any other thing, we're not trying to make this classic corporation where I have to send a memo to get something approved. If I have a good idea, I can run with the idea and then involve other people because they get excited, not because I'm jumping through hoops to try and get something done.
Yeah, exactly. So you're like orchestrating. So at the peak of DeFi Kingdoms, what is the highest number of active wallet addresses that you guys have had?
It was between 45 and 50,000 on a 30-day period.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So I wanted to
We
go
were
back to what I was asking you guys before, which was diving into the go-to-market strategy of the, starting with the economic side of things, financially incentivize and like people to get started, giving very high interest rates for individuals that want to, provide liquidity to the liquidity pools. And I wanted to kind of go back into that kind of sphere of things and ask you guys, if you were to do the whole thing again, would you guys do it the exact same way? Or if you wouldn't, what are the things that you would do differently?
I do think there's a couple things we would change. And it's not that they went badly, it's just that they could have gone better. So I think in terms of like the order that we kind of put features out, I think we probably would stick with that, or at least pretty close to it. Start with the DEX and liquidity pools. It's pretty straightforward. It gets people in, and then kind of grow from there, right? I think so obviously now hindsight's 2020, and a lot of stuff has changed in 2022 because of a ton of events. But even prior to that, so if we ignore that revamp, I think the things that we would probably change are, uh, we would have started with a lower total cap on our token, which we've kind of ended up with anyway because of everything that happened over the summer. But we probably would have started with a little bit of a lower cap, which would have also reduced APRs a little bit if we kept the same length of emission schedule, but not super drastically, and it probably would have been better long term. And then I think the other thing that we would change is we would have looked at a different lock unlock setup. Um, Potentially even offering a little bit more unlocked up front, but then keeping locked longer. So kind of rebalancing that a little bit. But that's definitely one thing, you know, a year in crypto is a very long time. And so, when you start a new token and you say, okay, here's our lock schedule, this much is going to be locked, and then we're going to start unlocking a year. So much can change in that year, as we have seen. And so, we set it to start in a year and then unlock over 1 year as well. So essentially 2 years from launch, everything is out there, everything is unlocked. And we realized that does create a pretty significant cliff. So I think we probably would have looked at, like I said, potentially doing more unlocked in that ratio, but then taking that locked and saying, okay, instead of 1 year, let's unlock over 2 or 3 years and kind of lengthen that cliff out a little bit, because the amount of tokens that can kind of all hit the market at once as unlock starts is pretty significant.
Yeah, and that could lead to a pretty steep drop off in price.
Indeed.
Mhm.
You
Especially
hope
over
it
the
doesn't, but
development.
it can.
Yeah, but it
over
could.
the development of a video game.
So with the gamified aspect of it, regarding the tokens, have you guys explored any methods of rewarding users that actually play the game, not just somebody that can say, hey, I'm gonna come in with $1 million and just farm all the tokens because that's the fun aspect of it, right? Like, have you guys looked at methods to implement where you can actually reward users that are participating, not just providing liquidity, right? That's where the play and earn shift came towards.
Yes. So we definitely have, and we've done some of them with even more coming. I mean, especially once we have our like PvP and combat features, that door just opens so wide because you have more to
Skill.
play.
Yeah, skill
But
based.
yeah. But like one thing that we had done in the past, and we ended up disabling it, and we haven't. It was in the original realm that we closed down. We haven't brought it to the new realm yet because we want to revamp it, and we just haven't had the time to do it yet. But we called them leaderboards, and so basically they just rotated through. Every day was a new thing that it was looking for, and it was all about like. One of the rewards you can get from fishing is a bloater. So it was like, okay, the top 10 players who get the most bloaters in the next 24 hours, you get, first place, second place, third place, etc., and you get a prize for that. So we definitely have looked at rewarding gameplay on like smaller levels like that. We're also we're working on an achievement system currently, and so one thing that we want to tie in there is like a daily activity kind of thing. But even beyond that, on a larger but less often scale, is, so I know y'all are familiar with DeFi Kingdoms, but our Gen Zero heroes, whenever we done an expansion, so like when we did our Crystal Vale expansion on our subnet, and then when we moved Sarandale, we in some ways have treated it as an expansion and in other ways have not, but we did treat it as an expansion in terms of Gen Zeros. But all of those are given out. So aside from our initial Gen Zero mint, we don't sell NFTs, we give them all away. And so we've tried to make sure that is a balance between people staking and people playing. So right now on the Sarandale move, we'll have done 200 for staking and 225 for gameplay. And then we still have a handful more to do in various methods, but we try to make sure we strike that balance. And then we also do stuff like our DFK duel, our mini game. We do a raffle for that every season, as well as it has rank rewards so that people are not only getting the rewards for winning, but if they play enough and they rank up, they get a reward for that. And then at the end of the season, we take everybody who participated, we put them in a raffle, and we do larger prizes for that as well. So we definitely want to make sure that well, I shouldn't say primary. We want to make sure that the rewards are not less for playing the game versus staking. Obviously, we need staking. It has to be there. So we have to make sure that they are rewarded as well. But active gameplay is always our goal. And so we want to make sure that those people are getting the same opportunities.
Yeah, and I would just tag on there that something also just like the in-game economy that is thought about in every decision that we're making as far as new releases, changes to existing portions of the game. It's just something that kind of goes through that filter and conversation of how does this affect gameplay? How does it reward this person versus this? We want to promote good gameplay and good behaviors within the game.
So speaking about in-game economy, you guys have a plethora of tokens that are inside of this damn game, right? You
Just a
got
few.
Jewel, I think you got Jade, you got Crystal, you got DFK Gold. So can you guys kind of dive into it? And so from my understanding, and from what we've seen from a lot of games, and I'll lay the foundation here, that there is an in-game token and there is also a governance token. And the reason you have the two is because you don't want there to be a whole lot of transactions with the governance token, because that is meant for a specific reason that's separate from transacting inside the game.
Yep.
Right. So then it would take away from the entire intention behind the token, which is to have people holding it and potentially staking it so that they can vote on the direction that the game actually heads in. Right.
Yep.
So that's the first distinction, right? There is a governance token and there is an in-game token, but now we got two other tokens, and I just want to give you guys the floor there to talk about that a little bit.
So one of the confusing aspects, right, is that they are all tokens from a crypto aspect. But then if you apply gaming logic to them, they are not all tokens. So I actually should have included that in the list of things that we would have done differently. But we now have is separating the game token from the governance token. So we now have, so Jewel, which is our original token, is our governance token. It's governance in both of our realms. You can also single stake it for fee sharing and that kind of thing, but that is your governance token. We've also made that a V token curve model, which I really like. It's time-based. So you actually stake your Jewel for a period of time, 7 days to 3 years. And the ratio of the governance representative token that you get is based on that time. So it allows smaller wallets to have the same voice as larger wallets if they're willing to stake longer. So, if I stake, and I'm going to mess up the numbers, but it's something along the lines of like, I could stake 100 Jewel for 3 years and I would have more governance votes than somebody who stakes 50,000 Jewel for 7 days. And those numbers might not be quite right, but somewhere in that ballpark, it's a massive difference. But aside from that, so Jewel is our governance token. And then we have Crystal and Jade. And so Crystal and Jade are identical tokens, essentially. They serve the same purpose, just in different realms. So Crystal is what you use to play in Crystal Vale. Jade is what you use to play in Serendale. And so they serve the same purpose. They, like, all of their utility is identical, and that's how it's meant to be. It's basically to allow that pricing to essentially do what it wants. So if more people want to play in Crystal Vale, then Crystal's going to be worth more than Jade. But the people who want to play in Serendale aren't going to suffer for that. So it kind of adds that degree of separation. Our goal is for our players to be cross-chain and play in both realms. And as more features come out, there's going to be more features that encourage you to play in both realms. Right now, a lot of it's really just based on APRs in the gardens, to be honest. But there will be a lot more features that encourage that cross-chain gameplay. And so most of the time, those tokens are expected to stay at relative parity. So then after that, you get into all of the like in-game tokens. So you mentioned DFK Gold. Gold is basically our in-game currency. So if you want to buy items in game, you can buy them with gold. If you know, when you go talk to the vendor, for example, all of their prices are in gold. So very similar to gold in most video games, it's usually gold. Or you can buy those items directly from other players using gold or any other token.
You
that you
can
want.
mine for gold. You can fish and sell your
Right.
fish for gold.
So when you sell in-game tokens, if you sell them to our vendor, you sell them for gold. Now, because it's DeFi, that player-to-player market exists, so you can really sell anything for anything. But from a game aspect, the idea is you sell your loot for gold, you use that gold to buy other items. And then after that, you get down to the loot. And like I said, technically speaking, all of those are tokens because it's on the blockchain, so they have to be. But they aren't tokens in the game sense, right? So if you look at something like the bloater, it's just a cash crop. It's literally meant to farm and sell. It serves no other purpose. It's a token because it's on the blockchain, but it's not treated as a token within the game.
Okay. Gotcha. So
Awesome.
it's more like an item. So what made you guys choose to use tokens like fungible tokens as the items as opposed to doing like ERC 1155 NFT, token standards?
So there actually is one reward in game that is an ERC 1155 now, the Eternal Pages. When we first launched, ERC 1155 wasn't really big yet. But the other side of it was that we wanted it to be, one of our goals is that all of your assets are always yours. And that's one of the differentiators, in our opinion, of GameFi versus traditional gaming is if we just fall off the map tomorrow and nobody shows up to work ever again, all of your assets are still yours. They are still protected on the blockchain as a token. And so with that kind of priority in mind, it made more sense to make them all tokens to where, you can move them and you can essentially do whatever you want with them. You own them, rather than doing more of a Web 2 solution of keeping it like off chain and just showing it on chain. But then if we disappear, you don't have anything. It's not actually there.
Yeah. So are there any like advantages or disadvantages between like having these like blockchain assets be tokens instead of like fungible tokens, like cryptocurrency tokens, as opposed to NFTs? Like, what are the advantages and disadvantages with going that direction versus taking the NFT route?
A lot of it's just simplicity. Having them as NFTs, technically speaking, makes every one of them unique. Which then becomes a lot more to manage because you're actually minting a new NFT for every one of those items, and then when it gets sold, that NFT is burned, but the number was still taken. So a lot of it just boils down to simplicity. By having them all as ERC20s, you just have a batch of tokens rather than a bunch of unique NFTs.
Okay, gotcha.
I want to touch up on the maps because we mentioned Jade, we mentioned Crystal, right? What are some differences between well, actually, I wanted you guys to give a little bit introduction between Crystal Vale and Serendale and a little bit about them. I know I'm sharing my screen, but if you guys want to share your screen and show something, that you can also do that as well, whatever works for you guys.
Yeah, no, you're perfect. So yeah, Serendale is our original map, which has now been moved to blockchains, but that's a whole nother thing. So Serendale is essentially our original map. And so one of the other visions when DeFi Kingdoms was created was it always was planned to be a cross-chain game. And there's a few reasons for that. One of the big ones is user adoption and being able to be available to users who don't want to leave their blockchain, which is a pretty common thing in crypto. A lot of people, have their chain that they're comfortable on, and that's about all they do. They don't go visit others. So part of it is user adoption and availability, but the other part of it is wanting to see a more unified cryptoverse and seeing like easier cross-chain interaction where hopefully one day the blockchain that a project is on doesn't define that project, which today it kind of does. Like there's a lot of weight put behind what chain it's on. We want to see that change eventually and see a I hate to use the word metaverse because it's used to death in crypto, and I hate saying it now because I feel like it just immediately makes people stop listening. But like if you look at crypto adoption, where there's it's so small compared to the global market. And so one of the ways that we see crypto growing is by more cohesiveness and more cooperation and people actually working together, which requires cross chain. So that was always one of our visions. And then from a gaming standpoint, if you play, Risen mentioned earlier World of Warcraft. I like to use World of Warcraft as an example because a lot of people are familiar with it. You always had different areas, right, where you could travel from this zone to this zone. And that's kind of the feel that we were going for with our cross chain is you travel from Serendale to Crystal Vale.
Yeah.
And then there's unique content in each, which right now that content's pretty limited on what's unique in each. But again, more of that will come as the gameplay develops to where you actually travel between the areas and the realms to complete different stuff or to have different experiences or to craft different stuff, get different loot, that kind of thing.
There's a lot of ideas that come from, because we use those examples a lot, because there's a lot of really cool things that have been done in them that, as simple as they seem, aren't that simple when you apply it to the logic of the blockchain. But even something like, as the higher level quests or things specifically like fishing, for example, World of Warcraft, you might have to go to a whole nother zone to hit that next level of quest for a specific skill. There might be a whole quest line that comes out for that specific skill that leads you on to a fight for that individual hero. Long term, that is our design and our thought process, to where you growing and leveling your heroes would involve you traveling to other realms on other chains and gaining that experience as well, integrating those communities. And like Bolan was saying, we see the future of the blockchain being less competitive between the chains and more realizing that, there's room for more than one person, especially when you talk about how many people are in the market that we don't have involved in crypto at all.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, I agree. So now that brings me up to the chains. Can you walk me through the history of how you guys began?
Real quick, but before we move to that, I have something I want to ask real quick. And so in like games like World of Warcraft, right? There's different servers. And the intention for these servers is that you can't have everybody all on one server because then it clogs up the network and then it can't run that way, right? So the idea of having multiple blockchains that are functioning for this game, is that like the equivalent of having multiple servers in a game like World of Warcraft, which would allow you to have a more of a horizontally scaled like video game infrastructure?
Also,
Definitely helps.
yeah, definitely helps. Blockchain is a little more forgiving than servers in that aspect. It can handle a lot more, but yes, I mean, ultimately, if we have 2 million, daily active wallets, we're going to put a hurting on a blockchain.
I mean, we already have put a hurting on.
We have put a hurting on a blockchain, yeah, but and with a lot less than 2 million.
I'm
But
looking at you, Harmony.
but yes, that is absolutely a part of it as well, is to be able to spread that load out to where people are moving between the realms. And so that is one part that's a little bit different is, in World of Warcraft, you can't cross servers. In this case, you would be able to cross because you can travel between the realms. But as you're going from Serendale to Crystal Vale, someone else is going from Crystal Vale to, realm X, and that person's going. So, but yes, that is absolutely a part of it as well, as it helps spread that weight out across the board.
That's pretty cool. So then, like, instead of every single realm, if you want to call it a realm, being exactly the same, each realm is a little bit different.
Yep.
Now,
We
are
want a
you
certain amount of parity to where if somebody was to start on any of the realms, they're having a similar experience. So if you start imagining our game as almost like the starting area of a an MMO, and as we get to higher levels, that's where we can spread and, you know, put those in different places, because then you're not really taking away from somebody's accessibility to start playing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I mean, I guess one reason why a game like World of Warcraft would make sure that all the servers are exactly the same is to create an instance where people aren't all fighting to be on one,
Mhm.
right? So how do you plan to avoid the potential pitfall that could arise if everybody prefers to be on Serendale or everybody prefers to be on Crystal Vale? Couldn't that create a potential scalability issue inside of the game itself?
So it would take a pretty good amount to get there, but it is possible. And so a lot of that comes from having the different features on different realms to where you're not forced to go to another realm, but if you really want to progress, you're gonna have to. And so, to Rizen's point, like base parity, absolutely. Every realm's gonna have a dex, every realm is gonna have a tavern to be able to buy heroes. Like it shouldn't matter where you start, your starting experience will be, comparable, essentially the same.
Yeah.
But
Just like WoW,
after
there's multiple starting
Right.
areas.
But after
So
that, you'll have reasons in game to go from one realm to another. And so like right now, for example, dark summoning, up there top left of the map, dark summoning is farther left, it was behind your name. Sorry. There you go. Dark summoning is our hero burn mechanic. And so you can actually burn two heroes to a third rather than the normal summoning method, and you get benefits to rarity, and you can use heroes that don't have summons remaining, that kind of thing. But dark summoning is only available on Crystal Vale currently, and that may change, but it may not. It may stay a Crystal Vale specific feature, and then we'll put a Serendale specific feature in Serendale. And so when you look at things, especially things like PVE, because PvP combat, that can kind of be in both. It would be in both places. It doesn't matter. But as far as PvE goes, you can have different quest lines in each realm, and maybe those end up being different, levels of difficulty. Maybe they have different loot. All of those things are options, and it'll probably be the majority of them realistically. And so, maybe I'm a new player and I started out in Serendale and I can do the first couple PvE quests there, but then after that, the level of difficulty ramps really high. But Crystal Vale has some more mid-level ones. I can move over to Crystal Vale to do those. But once I finish them and I want the better quests, now I'm going back over to Serendale to do that. So that's where like PvE especially gives us a lot of opportunities to encourage that cross-chain play, but also stuff like equipment and crafting. If you have some things that can only be crafted in some realms, you have that interaction where people are going back and forth, and that is the goal. Is we want our players to be able to primarily stay on their native chain, but be encouraged to go across as well.
uh, the
And
PvE,
obviously the goal is to have a roughly equal number
yeah,
on each native chain.
it
Yeah,
Yeah.
also
so
opens us up for the narrative and, storytelling aspect. Different chains have completely different, you know cultures, different styles. It's not just recolored. It's completely different. You feel like you're in a different world
Mm.
compared to going from Crystal Vale to Serendale. And that's how any expansions we do in the future are also going to be completely different, and it will allow us to tie those PvE aspects in to make incentivize people not only feature wise, but even just to experience everything that we put out there.
For the individuals that aren't aware, can you explain what you mean by PvE?
Yes, player versus environment. So combat, like
Dungeons,
dungeon crawls, monsters, that kind of thing, rather than
boss fights,
Yep.
things along those lines.
Which is important
PvP is
because
going to be player versus player.
PvP, you don't really have any control over. right? Because that's people walking around and they decide if they want to fight another player. But PvE, you create the environment. So if you're noticing, just to kind of sum up the idea here before we move on to the next topic, PvE, since you create the environment, you're able to say, well, there's way too much activity on the DFK chain right now. So what we need to do is we need to create an environment that people want to be in over in Clayton, for example, so that we can encourage more users to flood onto that blockchain. And then it's just a consistent balancing act of, it's like patching a game when like a character becomes overpowered, right? If that environment's overpowered, you can just kind of nerf it a little bit and then make the other one more powerful.
Which allows us to interject storylines. Like someday something might happen in Serendale that is exciting and new, or there could be, I'm just making stuff up, so don't read into this, but there could be an invading
write that down.
Or there could be some mysterious presence. Like that's what opens us up to so much exciting gameplay. And that's why we say like this is such a small portion of where we're envisioning the entirety of the game. There's a reason those are called massive multiplayer game. Like it's big. It's a big idea.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure Yoni was about to dive into the blockchain stuff next, right? So talking about like harmony.
Yeah. So I mean, I just want to really reiterate what they were saying is that by having these multiple worlds, you can have specific set of tools or specific set of missions and whatnot to incentivize you to go to different worlds to accomplish missions and tasks and whatnot. And that kind of helps with people, not just remaining on one chain. Obviously they can remain on their preferred chain if they choose to, but also jump onto the other one to do whatever they need to do. But yeah, that brings us into chains, right? As you guys said, right? Like the servers, the more servers you have, the more scalable it is. And us being diving into the fundamentals of blockchain, clearly the world is multi-chain. And in a world where you have everything in one chain, what happens is that as a game or as a DeFi protocol gains more and more users, the blockchain essentially bottlenecks, and that slows down the transactions. And as you can try to increase and make the chain faster, but at the same time, more users adopt. So it's like you're constantly having a battle of speed versus adoption. And now what's we've seen is a rise of like a multi-chain theory where you have many chains to help out and do the same transactions. That's why we're really big into interoperability. Like for example, like I'm huge into the Cosmos ecosystem, but you guys launched also on Avalanche as a subnet, which Avalanche does something similar to Cosmos by having subnets as Cosmos has IBC chains. So, I want you guys to talk a little bit about, first of all, how you guys started with the Harmony chain originally, and then the migration into Clayton, and also the DFK chain, which is its own Avalanche subnet.
Yeah, and one thing too that multi-chain brings, and this is a perfect example of it, is it adds a layer of security. Because when Harmony had their bridge hack and everything started, kind of happening on the Harmony side, had we not had our subnet or just another realm, really, it didn't have to be the subnet, that was just an added bonus, but had we not had another realm, we would have been in a much worse place. Instead, our players had a place to migrate all their assets to, had a place to move everything, to feel secure. Because let's be honest, when you hear, hey, our bridge got hacked for $100 million and it's a third of our value, your next thought is, how long until it stops running? And thankfully that never happened, but it's a real possibility. And so because we were already on another chain, our players immediately could go start moving assets over, which is massive. Very added benefit for security on that front. So to the actual question, so yes, we launched originally on the Harmony blockchain. We chose Harmony for a few reasons. One of them was low transaction fees. They were one of the cheapest chains around, and we knew we were going to be very transaction heavy, which we are. And then the other side of it though is they were really open to working with new projects. They really wanted to attract new projects and partner with them and work together to grow. And so it was a very appealing partnership. So we launched there. Obviously things were going very well. uh Thank you, bull market. Things were going very well. We were growing very rapidly, and we decided, the plan was always to be cross chain. Now's a good time with, everything going so well. We should start our second realm. We don't need to try to launch a bunch at once, but if we go ahead and get this done, then we have our introduction to being cross chain. And that's, that first expansion is the biggest one, really. After that, you've done it. And so we started talking to other chains and seeing, what the interest level from them was, what, they wanted to see from us. And so we met with probably 20 chains
Yeah.
back in the day. And so, Avalanche was very bullish on DeFi Kingdoms. They really wanted us to come over, and they just really wanted to work with us and be a partner. And that was our biggest priority as we talked to these other chains, is who wants to actually be a partner with us. We're not looking for a host. We're looking for a friend. And that's, yeah,
They
I know.
also were
I felt
very
like I said partner too many times, so I switched to friend.
they were
But
also very supportive of our vision long term. That was
yes,
also a reason that there were some that we did not consider, because they kind of going against that idea of working together. The
not
idea
all
of us
chains are big
being,
into cross chain.
yeah, some people
Um,
really just want to take it all.
but Avalanche was very supportive, very much, open to our goals and visions. So we started talking to them and kind of pursuing that idea. And then they brought forward subnets and said, hey, we're going to start this technology. We would love it if y'all looked at taking advantage to it and be, our first subnet, our flagship. We said, okay, let us talk about it. And so we talked about it and went, holy crap, this is going to be a lot of work. All right, let's do it. And so, the benefits of running your own subnet are pretty significant. Like ultimately, we have control over our gas fees, which is really nice. Our fees are also paid in our own token, which is really cool. So, our gas token is our token. And it's basically, I mean, ultimately, we are running our own blockchain. It's just backed by Avalanche C chain. And so the more we talked about it, the more excited we got about, like, we can have a GameFi chain, like we can make our own chain and attract other people to it. And so we pursued that pretty heavily. And at the time we had a Solidity dev, Mr. Fawn, who has stepped away from the project since, but he was instrumental. Like he really owned, I'm going to figure out how to build this subnet. Worked with Ava Labs a lot, who's phenomenal. They're such a good partner. They're very responsive. They're very here for us. They want to see us succeed. And so he pretty much just partnered with them and figured out how to make it work. And so then we launched Crystal Veil. Following a pretty similar pattern, we launched with just the DEX and liquidity pools first, then we introduced heroes, then we introduced questing, etc. However, unfortunately, because of the Harmony events, our timeline shifted a little bit. So at first it delayed us doing anything on Crystal Veil, and then it made us focus only on doing things on Crystal Veil. And so after the Harmony incident, we had a really heavy push to parity. And so we got, questing, the tavern questing, basically every feature, duels, everything that was already on Sarandale, we got over onto Crystal Veil. And then we started the topic. Well, actually, that's not true. At the same time, we were starting the topic of what do we do with Sarandale? What's our plan here? And ultimately, 90% of what it boiled down to is you can't build on a chain without stablecoins. It's just not feasible. At this point, Harmony no longer has stablecoins. We have to make decisions. And so we started.
I also want to mention that not only did you guys get affected by the Harmony bridge, but also by the Terra collapse, which you guys were big pushers of UST, as with any other protocol. So
Yes.
they give you a lot of setbacks to work through all these issues because, like you said, stable coins, and that was like the most popular one at that time, which
A
unfortunately,
lot of us were personally affected by it
right.
also.
Just to add a little extra context, the reason
Yeah.
why Bolon is saying that, Harmony no longer had the stablecoin was because it was the bridge that was bridging USDC onto the Harmony chain that was hacked. So
Yep.
then, since the highway that was bringing USDC, the only stablecoin on Harmony, onto the Harmony blockchain was shut down, they could no longer get USDC. They wrapped
And
version
also
of USDC on
BUSD. Is it
and
BUSD? Binance.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
ban USD.
Yeah.
That one as well. And also ETH, BNB, like not just the stables, but I mean it pretty much, except for our tokens, so Jewel, Matic, Phantom, Avox. I feel like there's one other, but like those were pretty much the only ones that kept their peg. Everything else fell. So, even if you were in the bigger non-stable tokens like ETH or Bitcoin, they also took a hit. And so, that makes a very unstable building environment.
They stole the road.
When people can't bring their tokens to that chain, because if you're not new to crypto, if you're already in crypto and say, oh, DeFi Kingdoms looks really cool, it's on Harmony, I'm going to bridge some tokens over to Harmony so that I can get started in DeFi Kingdoms, you expect those tokens to have their proper value on that chain. And so it makes it pretty unsustainable to build until it's addressed. And we were just at a point where we really couldn't afford to wait and see what happened. Obviously, the market was already massively down, and so it was kind of a act now or accept the potential consequences. And so we decided to act. So we went back to a lot of those chains that we had our expansion conversation with, as well as a couple of new ones. So obviously we ended up on Clayton, and Clayton actually got introduced to us. Dreamer actually met David Shin, who at the time was the head of global adoption for Clayton at NFT New York. And so as we entered all of these different conversations, we also started talking to Clayton. And Clayton just immediately reminded us of all of the same qualities that we had seen come through from Avalanche.
For added
Very
context,
good.
Clayton is a layer one blockchain that is
Yep.
Korean based, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
So Clayton is the number one blockchain in Southeast Asia. They are based in Korea. And so as we started talking to them, they're also big believers in our cross-chain vision. They're big believers in NFTs. Like NFTs is kind of the cornerstone of their blockchain. And then, what can be done with NFTs around that, which is where, for example, Clayton has an OpenSea integration similar to what ETH has. So our heroes are actually now visible on OpenSea, which is really cool, actually. But just very much so that same vibe of we want to be partners. We're very big in Southeast Asia. Y'all don't have a whole lot of presence in Southeast Asia, which we don't. You're very big in the Western world. We are not. Let's work together. Let's cross paths, and we can help bring you to the Southeast Asia market. You can help bring us to the Western market, and it can be a really beautiful match. But very much reminiscent of those Avalanche vibes of we're not a host, we're a partner. A blockchain is nothing without its projects. Projects can't run without its blockchain. We need each other, not you need us, and that's where it ends. And so through the conversations with them, they really backed our vision and our goals and our hopes for the future. And so we started pursuing that route. And then so we decided that we were going to pull the move to Clayton and migrate the Sarandel realm. And with that was our opportunity to look back on our tokenomics. Because one thing that really just doesn't make sense to do is migrate and copy and paste. If you move exactly the same thing with the same tokenomics, everything in place that's already there, there's nothing for players looking to enter necessarily. Like your previous players haven't gained anything. Your new players are still like have missed out, so to speak. So you're just kind of saying, okay, well, for our current players, you're going to be inconvenienced because we're moving everything. And if you're interested in checking us out, you're basically just coming late to the game, even though we just launched on your blockchain and you probably don't know who we are. So that was our opportunity to look back on that tokenomics plan and make some changes so we could separate our governance token from our gameplay token, for example, and just really kind of look at what lessons we had learned. So that was a really cool opportunity. And then we were getting pretty close to being ready for launch, and we discovered that our contracts were too heavy for 1 second finality, which is something that Clayton has, which is actually super cool. And for those of you that are less familiar with the finality side of blockchain, so essentially every block has a block, or every blockchain has a block speed, and the block speed is the time frame in which blocks are produced. Most chains, including DFK chain, are 2 seconds. Clayton is 1. So essentially every transaction has to process within that 1 second for it to be able to go through the blockchain. And so we discovered that a lot of our contracts were too heavy for that, and they couldn't support the way that they were written would not process transactions fast enough, which ended up also being a really nice opportunity for us. It kind of forced us to take that step back and review our contracts and make them more efficient. So not only were they more efficient when we launched Sarandel and Clayton, but we
Way
also
more
applied all of
efficient
those changes
on
to DFK chain as
Crystal.
well.
Yeah.
So it ends up lowering the gas costs to our users. Your transactions complete faster, which is just nice because it's the age of now and I don't want to wait. So a lot of really good enhancements came from that as well.
Cool. Yeah, one thing that we teach inside of our program about blockchain finality, which has been a example that it has seemed to really work when we're trying to explain it, is that so if you're at a pizza restaurant, right, there is people in the back making pizza, and you can increase the amount of pizzas made per minute by adding more cooks, more pizza chefs that can go in back there and make more pizzas. But you can't actually increase or decrease the amount of time it takes to make each pizza, because they all have to be in the oven for a certain amount of time for that to cook. So finality in the blockchain world is the equivalent of like the time it takes to make one pizza. And that would
Yep.
be the time it would take to mine one block.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And Clayton essentially has a very high powered oven.
So you guys took all the pepperoni out and everything and just put it.
Exactly. We cranked the temperature up and said, let's go.
Yeah, y'all made an air fryer for pizza.
Exactly.
I love it. Cool. Yoni, did you have anything else you wanted to go over in like this type of realm of things with blockchains before I move over to talking about another topic?
Yeah, I mean, so regarding this, just more of like the future outlook. Like, are you guys expanding and having like another world? And if so, will it be another Avalanche subnet? Are you guys looking to explore other blockchains, individual blockchains, or maybe trying to, maybe this might be too technical from dev side, but or maybe considering making like building your own chain, like for example now there's software developer kits for building your own chain, which like you guys said you can create your own gas token, which also brings you interoperability with like other chains. For example, in the Cosmos ecosystem, you launch a chain, you're automatically enabled with IBC, where you can interoperate with many other chains, which can bring liquidity in, and it kind of like gives you that like kickstart, because you're not just building a chain, you're already embedded into an ecosystem of chains.
One of the things that we can confirm is this is not the end. We always planned on being on more than two. We've always talked about that being the plan. as far as where and what and when, those are always questions that we're not going to give like real specifics until we get,
Mostly because we don't have them.
yeah,
They don't
these
exist yet.
days you can't. Crypto time is so different.
Right.
And so when we're ready to make that next move and announce that next move, it's going to be with a lot of thought and a lot of planning ahead of time, and right time, right place. And
I will say the current plan is to have 2 more full realms. So the original plan was 5. However, with the Sarandale move, we wanted to treat it kind of as an expansion. So it really all boils down to our heroes. So our hero tree structure is made with 16 basic classes in mind. There were 8 for the original Sarandale, 2 for Crystal Vale, 2 for the new Sarandale. So we're at 12. We need 4 more. That means 2 more realms. So we plan on doing 2 more full realms, as well as potentially doing like smaller stuff in other places potentially as well. But yeah, to Risen's point, I mean, at one point, just to throw it out there, at one point, you know, when we first started talking to our community about, hey, we're going to look at launching our second realm, this is our cross-chain strategy, blah blah blah, we told them the same thing of like, look, we're not naming names because we don't know, there's too much, but to give you an idea of what we're looking at, and we named off a few of the major chains. But I mean, Terra was one of them. At one point, Terra was absolutely in the running for another realm. They're not now.
Wonder what happened.
So, as far as like where and how, it really, until we're at the point where we say, okay, it's time to look for the next expansion, we remain in contact with as many chains as possible because we want to keep those doors open. We want to have relationships with them, but no commitments are made.
There's a lot of room in the future too for things that we might not even be considering at the moment, but might be just pipe dreams of, like we've talked about, us having outposts at different chains that we don't do a full realm on.
But
doesn't mean that in the future that couldn't expand to another playable area that might not have its own hero class.
You guys are
there's
such
nothing.
teases.
I'm saying. There's a
It's
reason
our specialty.
You guys are little chain
Why
sluts.
we're
It's
in
just,
marketing.
scared of commitment.
But
listen,
yeah,
we get told just enough information to be dangerous.
Yep. But yeah,
Blink
Risen's
twice if you're
right.
interested in building on Arbitrum. Blink 3 times if you're interested in building your own Cosmos app chain.
Arbitrum is not EVM compatible yet, right?
Arbitrum does have Arbitrum Nova now, which is
Okay.
it's a gaming specific chain now for them.
Because that is one thing that we have said, and I think we'll hold pretty firmly to.
Right. There's a lot of chains, blockchains that are focused on gaming specifically. Like there's IMX, and Solana was trying to do a gaming thing. So there's pretty much you have many options when it comes to where
I think we'll always restrict ourselves to EVM compatible because the thought of redoing everything we have into Rust is no. But aside from that, yeah, I mean, and a lot of non-EVM chains are also making EVM layer 2s now.
Right.
So that also opens that door. So I mean, there's so many possibilities that until it's really time, it just doesn't make sense to try to start those conversations. And then also with market conditions, asking a chain to commit to us building on them right now, with who knows what happening in the next 6 months, and we aren't looking at building for another 12 months or whatever the case may be, it's just too unpredictable to really dive into.
There's also the aspect of, we've always been very open to the idea of, not to use that dirty word again, but like metaverse style things of integration with other games.
Yeah.
We
Absolutely.
are very open to that idea, and the market right now, a lot of those other games haven't survived or haven't continued, or we don't know who is sharing our vision in the future. So in the future, we might make partners with somebody else that's running their own game that wants to do some form of connection with us. which might influence what we do next in that direction.
When you say, sorry, Bolin, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When you say integrate with other Web3 games, now, do you mean like bridging your NFT hero over to another game so it can be used in that game? I want you to, this seems like a rabbit hole that we need to dive down.
I'm so happy because you queued up my shameless plug perfectly. Because I was about to ask if I could make a shameless plug, and
Absolutely,
it's just a layup.
I saw him rubbing his hands there, so I knew he was gonna say something.
you can send
activated
3
the
ETH
whole
to my
lot.
wallet address.
You mentioned, are we considering maybe building our own chain one day? That is also part of how we view DFK chain, because ultimately it is our own chain. It's running off of C chain, but it is our chain. And so one thing that we have started doing, but want to go a lot further down the rabbit hole, is we don't want our subnet to only be DeFi Kingdoms. That was never the intention for it, and that's not where we intend to stop with it. We want it to also be a GameFi chain, and have other projects on it, build other stuff on it.
And we don't want to take them to a whole nother thing. Like, we've talked to other games about integration, building a building in our game that takes them to their game. That's where we see the first step.
I
Yeah.
see what you're saying.
We
So essentially what you're saying is like for example, you built a subnet already, you did the hard work, and you have new games that want to launch, and you say, hey guys, we can help you launch. You can launch on our chain. Then maybe we can incorporate, and we can have our NFTs into your game, be compatible, and vice versa.
Do me a favor.
And that lowers the barrier of entry for the other games that wanted to come.
Click on the castle for me on the map.
Uh,
It's up a little. There you go. And then go to, oh god, I'm so used to Crystal Vale now.
I can jump to Crystal Vale.
Yeah, jump to Crystal Vale for me, because we haven't redone the castle layout on Sarandale yet, which we will be doing. So on Crystal Vale, it's a little easier to.
And notice, just switching realms, all you do is switch the blockchain; it automatically switches.
Yep.
You can do it from the menu in the game, and
you can also do it on the world map where it's at the dots.
Yep. So if you click on the Jester, so real quick, actually, before you click on the Jester, sorry. So on the far right in the bottom, you have the Archivist. So the Archivist is a link to tools that we have partnered with. So stuff like Roam Blockchain Labs and the Roam Terminal, which is like a trading terminal, that's linked in the Archivist, as are a few other tools like infographic websites, not podcasts. Podcasts are going to go in a different NPC that we're going to be adding shortly, but different analytics. Lila's Ledger is a tax tool. So Roam Terminal is like a DeFi dashboard. So these are all tools that we're partnered with. And then, and Swap Scanner. And then after the Archivist, you have the Envoy. The Envoy is just a representative of more like industry partners. So you can see that here, you got your blockchains, MetaMask, Dex Screener, Dapper Radar, that kind of thing. And so this one is self-curated. This is us. The Archivist and the Jester are open for application to anyone. So half of the stuff in the Archivist is community built from our community. Like Lila's Ledger, that tax tool, that was a bounty that we put out and one of our community members built. DFK Expert is an infographic website that one of our community members built. And then you have the Jester. So these are actually games that are already integrated with our NPCs. DFK Arena will be on the blockchain. It'll actually be launched on DFK chain with smart contracts. DFK Fight Club is actually hosted through a Discord bot, so you play it in Discord, but both of them use your DeFi Kingdoms heroes in them already. Level is like a introductory platform where you get additional rewards for completing specific activities within different DeFi platforms. We're just one of the dApps that's listed on it. But this is a really big part of our vision, and we have a few more already in the works where if you integrate our stuff, even better. But if you're just a game and you want to launch on on DFK chain, great. Like
Come
that's
on
good
over.
for us, it's good for you, bring users. So we really want to turn DeFi DFK chain into a gaming blockchain as well. It's really highly optimized for gaming because we knew what we were putting on it, and so the gas fees are very low. There's a lot, the transaction processing or the throughput is very high. That's the word I was looking for. So that's what we built it in mind with.
So I want to kind of summarize what you just said in Web 2 words real quick.
Yeah.
Make sure that I am gathering the correct vision that I feel like you're portraying and what you guys are working towards, and with what we can already see with 2 different games being built. So this is almost like the equivalent of, let's say Nintendo decided that Mario was selling a lot of different versions of Mario. So if you played Super Smash Bros, there's all the different skins of the colors of Mario that you can have. So let's say there was 1,000 different types of Marios. And in order to play Mario Party, you needed to buy one of those Marios or Wario's or Bowser's or Peaches or Toads or anything like that in order to be able to play. And then now imagine if the Mushroom Kingdom was its own blockchain, like what DFK chain is, then you could essentially, as a player of the game, decide, I kind of want to build my own Mario game that is Mario Go-Karts instead of Mario, whatever it's called, the racing one. Wow, I can't even think of the name. Mario Kart.
Mario
Oh,
Kart.
wow, yeah, Mario Go-Kart's not a very good differentiator. I want to create
You do
Mario.
Mario Tennis versus Mario
Yeah.
Go-Kart.
Yeah, well, there already is Mario Tennis. It's
Yeah,
like
they
Mario
branded
Golf
Mario
or
Mario
something. I don't know.
curling.
They want to curling. Love
Party.
it. Love it. Mario curling. Then somebody could actually create their own version of a Mario game. And then since people are already purchasing their own NFTs that are their playable characters, they could then immediately get players into the game that they just built instead of trying to launch from the ground. They can leverage the community that DeFi Kingdoms has already built to create a game that could be successful almost instantly because it's piggybacking off of the back of an already successful franchise.
And
Yep.
you get the support of us. We
Yeah.
actually have a builders program. We get involved where, they have outreach with us. We, Bolon could speak more on the details of, like, as an example of some of the things that have already been put out. But we've been involved in it since the initial idea of a lot of these.
Yeah, you don't have to talk to us. You're not required to, but we want to help. We want to help people do that. So we call it the Kingdom Building Program, and so we have a program where you can say, "Hey, I'm interested in building this," and we'll say, "Okay, cool. Like, what support can we give you? How can we help you? Let's talk." And at one point, we were going to be offering grants for it. Obviously, with market, that is not currently a thing, but we hope to get back there one day. And so, but yeah, like we really want to see more things built just in crypto in general, but if they can use our ecosystem, all the better for it. And so that's something that's very important to us, is how can we support builders. And so, like, one thing that we have added, so the dual raffle there at the top, so if you play duels, you get raffle tickets. Win or lose, you get a quantity of tickets. Obviously, if you win, you get more, and then you can enter into the various raffles for different prizes. And so one thing that we actually have done is we offer these tickets to those third-party builders as well. And so what we did was we set a price point. We pay that price point as well. So we pay the same price per ticket to award them in duels that the third-party builder would pay for their game, but they can actually integrate raffle tickets into their game and reward them out to players as well. So not only can you use our ecosystem, but you can actually have a tangible reward within our ecosystem as well for people playing your game. So that's something that's very important to us, is we want other people to build off of us as well.
That is really cool. And It's interesting because I keep coming across different applications of blockchain that I never thought of. And that is definitely one, right? Is the ability for people to create spin-off games of a core game, almost like a layer 2 game. You could visualize it that way to make it easy to
Yep.
comprehend. That then the players in the original game could then just be ported into to have then even further increased utility to the overall core game, which is
Yeah.
crazy to
And
think
instead
about.
of being sued by the company for IP infringement, you're getting supported by the company to build fun stuff because
I really want to
that's what our community actually wants.
It-
That's what I would want on every game I've ever played.
and that's one thing that I just absolutely love about this Web3 world is that instead of it being so constricting and limiting and people worried about IP rights and you're stealing my idea and stuff like that, the whole realm of all of Web3, whether it's from IP rights with video games to brands like Bored Ape, where they want people to create ape water, like literally there's cans of water that have apes on it. It's a company. Or like
Yep.
there's like a cafe over in California that has Bored Ape Yacht Club called Bored and Hungry. Like it's like instead of it having that constricted mentality of you can't use my IP rights, it really creates this expansive consciousness for the entire world. And what kind of
We're in
growth can we
control of it.
see? What kind of growth can
It's
we
all
What
about
kind
see
of
in
industry do
innovation
we
with
want to
that?
work in?
What was that?
I said, we get to decide what kind of industry we want to work in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get to decide how the companies are run, how the structure is. Why do you think I don't know what my title actually is? Because it doesn't matter.
It's all, I mean, Web3 in general, and like I said, it's something that we really care about. Is it's all about individual ownership of the asset, not corporate ownership of an asset.
You guys
I
need
want
you guys need titles for like DeFi Kingdom style titles,
Risen's
we
the
actually
warlock.
have been working on that
like
a
a
little bit.
druid or something like that, a warrior. That way when we ask like, what do you do? I'm the druid of DeFi Kingdom.
No, we can't go down that realm because I'd end up being the jester somehow.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll just go down the blockchain then.
But that's cool though. That gives like the catchphrase or that noun that we use, wag me, right? It
Yep.
gives it a new meaning. Meaning we're all gonna make it. If you work with us and if you build with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. And it answers the one question that I had that I was going to bring up, which is, are you guys going to need to rebrand the name DFK chain if you're going to try to bring more projects into here? Like, why are people going to want to build on DFK chain if it's literally named after another game? But the intention is for people to build off the game.
Right.
Which is
And so
really
we
cool.
actually have talked about that a little bit, but but yeah, I mean the hope is that most would be integrated in some form or fashion to use some of our NFTs. Or like another thing too is we have pets that are NFTs. I really want to see, and I've thrown this out on multiple calls because I'm hoping somebody will steal my idea and take me up on it. But I want to see like a Pokemon Snap style game using DFK pets, where the pets that show up are random, and you're trying to take pictures of them, and then you get a score. So I'm really like, there's so many opportunities within the pets.
Is this a Corbata?
It actually is not. There were talks of having a Corbata crab, and those talks are not dead. It just depends on what Corbata ends up doing. But that is actually another form that we've been talking about a lot, is incorporating partnerships into pets. And so you could have a Corbata crab, or you could have a Bored Ape. Wait, they'll never agree, but you know what I mean. And so, being able to work those like promotional pets into our pet system as well. Why not? Like, let's cross promote, let's have fun with it, let's make multiple games, because ultimately, like, no matter how good of a game we develop, like no matter how amazing our combat is, 14 hours in, somebody's gonna have to take a break.
Right.
So if there's already other content for them to play within that same environment, it's just a win for both sides.
And you're
It
seeing
just
that in a
gives the
lot of
players
video
more
games.
options for stuff to do.
Yeah, you're seeing that in a lot of the video games that even me and Bolon play personally, where you have existing titles like League of Legends, for example, and then they have used their IP and expand that into other completely different style games,
Yeah.
their own popularity and their own existence. The only thing is we're not trying to do all that by ourselves.
Right.
We're not trying to monetize literally every portion of everything that touches us, because realistically, it's not our game, it's the community's game. We're helping build it and we're helping bringing it to life, but they're just as involved in every portion of it.
Yeah.
On
We want to
theory,
build
in
League of
practice.
Legends. We want someone else to build TFT.
Yeah, that'd be
That's-
real dope. If somebody could do that, I would love to stop spending my money.
Something that Risen said to me when I met him over in Miami at Decentral. For you, that's kind of how this whole thing started, was networking. So if you're not networking, go network. But he literally told me that, DeFi Kingdoms, the community, if they wanted to, they could decide that the community, that the company that built DeFi Kingdoms, they could get rid of them. They could vote them off the island to say, hey, we don't want you guys actually running the show anymore. We want somebody else in. So then what's the name of the company actually that is currently
Kingdom Studios.
Kingdom Studios. So the community that holds Jewel, the governance token, right? They could literally put out a proposal, just like how there's government proposals, bills that pass and everything like that, and say, hey, Kingdom Studios isn't doing their job. We want them out. And if enough people vote yes on that proposal, then the people that built DeFi Kingdoms would be gone.
Yeah.
That'd be really sad, because
then I have to go find somebody else. But yes,
a real job again, and I really don't want to do that.
So that actually,
you guys are great. This brings me to a question regarding Jewel, right? Since Jewel is the governance token, like, how much power does the Jewel governance token have in relationship to the entire DeFi Kingdoms ecosystem in general, right? From the operations to marketing to business development and whatnot. So like, at what point does the development company make decisions, and at what point does that get separated from the governance?
So we try to frame it primarily into two camps: game development and ecosystem.
Okay.
If it's ecosystem, so then it goes to a governance vote.
Real quick, can you kind of explain what you mean by ecosystem?
Yep. So like, for example, we had a vote for Crystal Vale for if we wanted to add Matic and FTM to the liquidity pools. Two separate votes, one for each token. But we had a vote that said, do you want Matic as a liquidity pool? That vote didn't pass, so we didn't do it. At the same time, we also had a vote that said, do you want Clay? We're going to Clayton. Sarandale's going to Clayton. We would like to include a Clay pool. That one passed. Now there is a Clay pool. So anything that affects like the economy, we try to utilize community votes and make sure that they're heard. When it comes to game development, so like, how is combat going to work? No, that's us. Because holy crap, the thought of trying to build a game by community vote, it will be 30-74 and this game will still not be out.
Right. At some point you need some leadership to develop.
Right.
So they definitely influence it with their feedback. There's no
absolutely.
We've changed direction on certain ideas because of, we throw something out there a little bit, not giving away the house, but sometimes we've gotten real positive and sometimes not.
We've also done non-binding votes and said, hey, this is a vote, but we're not saying that we're committing to, the result. We want to know your opinion, vote so that we can get a feel for your opinion. Because realistically, if 51% says yes, it's probably just, it's probably not that great of an idea because it's too polarizing anyway. So we've done stuff like that. We're very much involved in the feedback side. As Risen mentioned earlier, we do weekly AMAs with our community, which are super fun. But we also have talk.defykingdoms.com. It's a RapidR hosted feedback site, but people can go in and submit general feedback, ideas, things that they want to see, that kind of thing. And all of those, I get an email for every single submission that comes through, and I read every single submission that comes through. So we're very big on the feedback side of things. We want to know what people think. We're open to tweaking stuff, but ultimately the game design is ours and we're building the game.
We do.
So
You might want to mention also, like, even the idea of our, yeah, our knights, our moderators. We have an extremely large, moderating uh, group of
task force.
people that are not only extremely involved in the moderation of our community, they also are involved in the testing, beta testing, and things like that before anything comes out. And so we put it in the hands of a lot of our knights who are the most connected and actively communicating with our community, mostly because they started from the community. I mean, they all came from our community in some form or fashion. And they're the ones we hear feedback from first on a lot of different things.
So
Yeah,
speaking
so
of all of these like employees and moderators and you guys, like everyone for the most part, I know some people probably aren't, but a lot of people are getting paid, right? Because they have to, take care of their families, they got to pay rent, they got to do all that. So how exactly does Kingdom Studios make money?
So primarily from a share of in-game fees. So any fee that's paid in-game, which actually does not include the transaction fee itself, but the in-game fee. So like if you pay to summon a hero, you pay to buy a hero. Although actually in that case it comes from the seller. So I guess you sell a hero, you summon a hero, you summon a pet, you level up. Anything that costs crystal or jade, not jewel, because nothing costs jewel anymore. So anything that costs crystal or jade, those fees all get split into 3 different places. One of them is into the single staking of jewel. So if you have jewel staked for governance, you are getting a part of the fee sharing. So part of it goes to that. Part of it goes to our quest fund, which is what feeds the rewards for like mining, gardening, and then obviously in the future, all kinds of different quests. And then part of it comes back to us as the development team. And so that part of that portion that comes back to us is then what we use to pay for all of our various expenses, which is not only payroll, although yes, payroll, because we do have bills, but outside of that, also marketing, going to events, running DFK chain, because that's not free. So any kind of expense that we have is all coming out of that.
So you guys are getting paid in jade or crystal or jewel. Are you not getting paid in US dollar?
So we actually changed it a while back. I want to say like February, maybe. So for the first, oh God, that was almost a year ago. Whew. So for the first like 4 or 5 months of the project, we actually did all get paid in jewel. And then we made the transition to getting paid in USDC. So we get paid in a stable coin. And so basically, as those fees come in, they're very, very slowly sold in very, very small portions, always like never enough to make any kind of price impact from the transaction. So just slow and steady, essentially, into various tokens, which are then sold for USDC. And then that's what we use for our payroll. Some of that gets cashed out into USD to pay for real life expenses like the servers and events and that kind of thing.
Okay, because that you knew my next question, which was how do you prevent the sell pressure from paying everybody because they got to get paid and they got to convert that into US dollars somehow to pay for their
We've
expenses. How do you
always
prevent the
had,
sell pressure from really being too much?
Yeah.
yeah,
We figured out because when we were getting paid in jewel, essentially we had guidelines that said we never sell more than 0.1% price impact every 6 hours. And if we're on if in the last 24 hours there has been a red candle, it's 0.05% price impact. So all of our team was always under that restriction to minimize our own price impact. And then essentially when we started talking about making the change out of jewel-based pay, people who are much smarter than I am did the math, and it's actually less sell pressure to just have a slow and steady sell versus having everybody on the team periodically doing these sales. And so that way it reduces that sell pressure. So, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I would hazard a guess that our sales are probably like 0.0001% price impact at a time. And it's just a matter of doing enough small transactions over extended periods of time.
Okay, that makes sense. So then my next question then, and I see this being a complication with utilizing a token as being what you pay your employees with and your team with, is that the team obviously benefits from having a more expensive token, right? Because then they will get paid more. Now, at the same time, if that token is used within the gameplay of the actual video game, then the increased price of the token also increases the barrier to entry so that individuals can come in and actually play the game. So how do you balance the two and try to stay like, at what point have you noticed where it really becomes a detriment, and like how do you kind of balance that is really what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I'll let him go into his spiel, but I've always, we were happy when things were very high, because why wouldn't any logical person be happy that something that they have is valuable?
Talking about jewel price, right?
Yeah, but
Okay.
at that same point, I think it was always a thought that the barrier to entry was kind of high. That it was going to come to a more realistic, natural point long term in the in-game economy of having this be a playable game.
Yeah.
Um,
And one thing I do, so even when we were getting paid in Joule, we were getting paid in Joule based off of a USD hourly rate. So the token being worth more actually didn't necessarily matter. In some ways, I guess it was
Mm.
kind of a detriment because I got less of it. So that did at least help balance that factor of, for me, whether Joule was, $5 or $15, I was going to get the same USD equivalent regardless. So that aspect alone did help with that. But that's ultimately why we wanted to go away from jewel-based pay, because what it also does is it can cause a kind of level of contention with our own community that we don't want to be there. Of, okay, we're doing a raffle for Gen Zeros, and part of one of those raffles is based on staking Jewel. Okay, do we qualify or do we not? Because the Jewel that I'm staking has come directly from the project because it was my pay. Now it doesn't. If I own Jewel, it's because I'm paying Jewel just like any other investor. But at that time, it wasn't as cut and dry. So it added kind of a layer of complexity to that relationship that we didn't like anyway. And that was a big part of why we wanted to go away from Jewel-based pay, was so that the team invests on their own. Their choices of how they invest, where they invest, if they invest, those are entirely personal choices, and it's entirely decoupled from their pay.
and
I have
took
to
some of
take
the
my
pressure off.
USDC and go buy Jewel
Yeah.
just like anybody else would, versus, oh yeah, it was payday, so Jewel just hit my wallet. And so that was a big part of why I personally, I think that I would recommend for any project to not pay in your own token. And yes, that means that you have to sell your own token as a project. It does, but otherwise your team's just selling it anyway. People
Yeah,
have bills to pay.
at least you have control.
Yeah.
You keep the
Yeah,
layer
you
of
have
control when
control,
it's
pressure.
and it takes the pressure off of the individuals too. Like,
Mhm.
I, as a team member who had a very public face, and Bolon as well, our wallets were looked at to such a degree that if I sold within the guidelines on a particular day, I might get 5 DMs asking me about what's going on in my life that I'm selling for my paycheck.
Like, my mortgage payment is due.
Yeah, like
Like,
there's definitely a lot of those situations where they weren't like necessarily mean spirited or even invasive. It's all public, but that same point, I don't really want to have to answer to random stranger on the internet why I'm cashing my paycheck. So this new system is a lot better because the project as a whole can represent what they're doing
mhm.
as compared to the individual person working for a job.
Yeah.
Do you have to have your wallet doxed? Is there any way that you could remain somewhat private there? Because I feel like that's like kind of a,
So you can
invasion
try.
of trust.
You can try. It's pretty difficult to really hide, especially because I mean, ultimately, like the pay is coming from a project wallet. So
Yeah.
unless you're hiding the project wallet, you can see every wallet that wallet is sending to. So getting a list of every wallet being paid by the project is pretty easy. Now, I will say for us, we made it a little easier to then figure out who's who because we have in-game names. So you can figure it out pretty
Well,
quick.
that and even
But
like
the other problem
sending
is,
stuff to people in the like we give away stuff. A lot of the stuff that was given away in the first 5 months of the game came a lot from our own wallets
Yeah.
of just like here's heroes, here's
or you send
jewel.
somebody some gas because they
Yeah.
ran out of gas and are trying to make a swap. Like it's so easy to like, but the other problem too is if you don't, then now the question is, okay, what are you hiding? Are you doing insider trading? Are you not following the sale limits that the team is supposed to be held to? So having it be transparent is a form of accountability that I think is really good, but having it be public also means everybody's watching what you're doing all the time, and the most legitimate action possible can quickly turn into not to go too far in depth, but we announced an upcoming event, and like 30 minutes after we announced the upcoming event, which by the way was the first that Risen had heard of it, Risen bought a few heroes. And even though it was after the announcement, there were still people that tried to be like, oh, look at this insider trading. And thankfully we do have a very good community who was like, no, you're wrong. But you get those questions, and that's, like I said before, anybody who starts their own crypto project, I would strongly recommend don't pay your employees in your token. You'll probably have to at first because it's all you'll have. You won't have funds. All you'll have is your token. But as soon as you can move away and have a single dedicated project controlled wallet doing controlled sales to then pay your people with that, do it. It's worth it. It's so much better for the mental health of your employees, for the mental health of your community, and just for the general good of your project.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And I think like for instances like this, that's why you create, many wallets, that this can be your employee wallet, and then you can have your own personal wallet, which shouldn't commingle that way. Because let's say you send funds from this wallet to your personal wallet, right? Even though it's your own money that you spent, people try to associate something like, oh, this guy's sending funds from, DeFi Kingdoms to his own wallet and doing something shady, right?
Mhm.
Rather than doing that, you can take it to an exchange it for dollars if you wanted to, or trade it there privately and do your own business and
Right.
not have to all this correlated, right? The
Yeah.
less correlation between your personal wallet and a work wallet, the less drama you have to face, and
Yeah.
less issues.
And I would say with your personal wallet, just don't even interact with your own
Right.
DApp.
Right.
Just your personal wallet is for other crypto, and your work wallet is for your project. And
That's
but yeah,
perfect in retrospect, but that's not what I did. But there was a certain point of that too that came along with, at the same point, as much negativity as could be out there, there was also a ton of positivity of I'm the dude that's out there telling people about this,
Mhm.
and they look at my wallet and they look and see me playing the game,
Yeah.
buying and leveling heroes at like putting my money where my mouth is, and
Well, that's
when they lost, I lost.
the three largest stakers of Jewel in both like individually in each realm are Frisky Fox, which is our founder, Dreamer, who's our president, and Pieface, who's our co-founder. The three of them in both realms are the top three stakers of Jewel. And because that's known, like because those wallets are attached to them, it does go a long way in showing confidence of, hey, we were here at the beginning, so we have a crap ton of tokens because that was the only way that, the only way money existed. We're not dumping them, we're not selling them, we're actually locking them. They're running 3-year time locks on them. We have locked these tokens back in for 3 years because we believe in the project. So there is a very positive side of it as well, just not when it comes to direct pay.
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
not the C level or founders or larger wallets, maybe a little bit more important for
Yeah.
visibility than your
But
average person.
people just got to pay their bills, and that, it's something that I think a lot of people forget when you look at people who are working for a crypto project. You see them sell and go, oh, they're selling their own token, they don't believe in it. No, I do believe in it, but I'm also hungry.
Well, I thought you lived in the metaverse. What do you mean you have to eat and shelter
I
yourself?
know my body hasn't uploaded yet. Mountain
We
Dew's
do have
not
a
cheap.
bounty out for somebody to figure out how I could live off of a direct Ethernet port installed into
Right,
my body, but it hasn't been filled yet.
I gotta
Oh,
buy
man.
Mountain Dew.
Yeah, you got to get it when it's on sale, right? So
They don't take Dew yet.
you mentioned locked jewel, and that kind of brings up a topic that I know a lot of people that might be watching this video want some clarity on. Risen, I know that you and I talked about it in person a little bit, which definitely answered some questions for me. But I know that there was a slight bug that happened a while back to where, and Yoni can probably explain it better than me if you want to kind of take over from here with what happened.
I mean, I'm not too quite sure of the details, but it was, I don't know if it was a bug, but it was like the 2 million jewel that was originally supposed to be the pre-mined or pre-minted for the original pool, um ended up being sold off. And then I think there was some kind of misconception between that being like the team wallets versus actually being like an early investor. So
Yeah,
I'm not really sure of the exact details for it.
yeah. So it actually wasn't sold. It is still there, and actually now it is in one of the project multi-sigs. So essentially, what had happened was so basically at the start of DeFi Kingdoms, so we've never had any VC investment. Let me back up. Sorry. We've never had any VC investment. We've never had any, we have yet to do a fundraiser, anything like that. So when we were looking at launching DeFi Kingdoms, which was actually a few weeks before me and Risen joined,
Wow.
as they were looking at launching, the question became, okay, we need some funds up front. We don't need a lot, but we need something to start the DEX and start the liquidity pools. So it was decided that $15,000 would be put in as one Harmony's token, and then paired with 2 million Jewel to set the original liquidity pool and launch the Jewel token. Where the confusion came in is so that $15,000 was actually given by a friend of Frisky Fox, our founder. Said, hey, I believe in you. You've been working hard on this. I will put up the $15,000 that you need. If I lose it, if everything goes to zero, that's fine. There's no like repaying the 15,000. It is a gift. The other side of that was whatever rewards came from that $15,000 would go to the person who put it up, as if they were investing on their own, but their funds would be used to kickstart the project. Where things got messy was actually I'm just going to be honest, a really dumb mistake on our part, and just a flat out mix up that sounds like such a cop out, and it's not meant to be, but it does. So they essentially gave that $15,000 to Fox and said, you set up the wallet, you set up the liquidity, like you get it started, and then I'll take control of it after that. So as our white paper was being written, Fox set up a wallet, gave that address to his name was Jericho. He was writing the white paper for us. He also worked on the project. That wallet got put into the white paper. Fast forward to the day of launch, Fox was going to launch and decided, I don't want to do that. I'm going to create a brand new wallet right now so that its starting point is now. That way there's no history of this wallet. It starts with this liquidity. Set up the new wallet, proceeded as normal. We never updated the white paper. So what really caused everything was that the address that we had listed as our initial liquidity address was not our initial liquidity address. It actually was a dead address with nothing in it. So that original $15,000 worth of one, as well as the jewel that went with it, was never withdrawn, never sold. It stayed in that liquidity pool. The individual actually claimed rewards, recompounded, put more into that pool, put into other pools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but never touched that liquidity. Anytime they did any withdrawals, they never withdrew from that pool. They withdrew from a couple other pools, but they never even touched that one. They deposited more into it, never took any out. So when all of that came to light, which was it coming to light for us, we didn't realize that we had the wrong address in there, which is why I say it was a really stupid mistake. But when all of that came to light, they sent those LP seeds for that initial liquidity. They sent that over to the marketing fund multi-sig safe that was listed on that previous page. So those LP seeds actually came back to the project and are just held in one of our multi-sigs so that there's no question that they can't be touched or sold or anything else. But yeah, that's essentially the short version of it. But yeah, it was definitely, like I said,
A lot of the
there's
explanation.
no rationale other than it slipped through, and nobody ever thought to go back and look at that wallet address. So we never did, and obviously neither did anybody else for a long time. And then somebody did, and took it straight to Twitter where it exploded, and then we were trying to figure out what was going on.
And as we figured it out, a lot of times the actual answer, like he says, even now, it's already all blown over, well past. It still sounds kind of like a cop out.
It does.
Like the answer does sound that way, but Occam's razor, we're human beings, and like it, it's a pretty simple mistake that in this world that we've all experienced with how many different things blowing up in people's faces, they're not wrong to question or be concerned about it. But there's a certain point where an explanation is the explanation. We open everything up, we show, and that's it. Like that's the story.
Yeah. And I
So,
mean, but there's so many variables that are in play with a crypto game with all these different wallet addresses and all these things that business owners have never actually had to deal with before.
and
So
you're
it's
dealing with the excitement of launching your project. Like the last thing in your mind is, oh, I need to go paste this wallet address over
yeah.
here. And then it just, yeah.
And who thinks to go back, let's say a month in, 2 months in, like while all this is still exploding, and be like, this one specific address, I'm going to search in the Explorer and double check that is this address.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, at that point, Fox had passed control over of that wallet like the next day. So, that whole wallet was kind of out of his mind at that point because it had already been passed out or passed over to its owner. And so, yeah, like I still hate saying it was a dumb mistake because I really just don't like it, but it was. I mean, just got caught up in the mix of everything going on and literally just did not paste the wallet address. That's what it boils down to. And that's where it becomes more laughable, is because it is such an easy mistake.
Mhm.
Like, how many emails have you sent without attaching the attachment you meant to send? Like,
Yeah.
it's just such a small thing that ended up not being a small thing because it wasn't, but it was easily missed.
Mhm. Gotcha.
so So the one thing, because you guys did have a revamp of the Jewel tokenomics of it. One thing that was also, I think it could like hindered a little bit was the fact that the lock Jewel was still being able to be sold on like a secondary market, right? And because of that, that also caused some negative sell pressure on DeFi Kingdoms in general. Is it possible to sell the new jewel that's locked or vote escrowed on a secondary market? Because if you guys switch to the VE model, that means that really these tokens don't have liquidity and can't technically be sold for anything, right?
Correct. Yep. So they are soulbound tokens. So there's no way to transfer them at all. And that's where, your point about locked jewel is 100% accurate. And so then, we had a discussion about locked crystal of, well, do we want to remove that function? Do we want to take out the transfer all function? And now there is no secondary market because you can't move it from account to account. But what you really do is punish players who have legitimate reasons for moving from one account to another.
Right, like
You know,
compromised
going
wallets and whatnot.
from having a compromised wallet, from going to a hot wallet to a cold wallet. Like those are the people who suffer for that decision of saying, nope, whichever wallet gets you locked, you're done. That's it. It can't go anywhere. And so an unfortunate byproduct of that is that you do get the secondary markets, which sucks because we, you know, not only do we not want that, but it's just like it's bad for the ecosystem as a whole. It's bad for the environment as a whole. But you know, we just, as we talked about it, we couldn't look at each other and say, no, we should screw over the people who have actual reasons in order to stop it. Like it's just not a decision that we wanted to make, that we felt comfortable with. Now with Cjul and Sjul, that's a different story. You're voluntarily locking it for that time with the understanding that this is a soul bound representative token, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we do have an emergency withdrawal feature built into Cjul and Sjul. However, it's meant to be for emergencies only. So what it does, you keep all your rewards, but half of your initial deposit is burned. You get the other half back and half of it is burned, which ultimately, if your wallet is compromised, half is better than none. It's a good, you know, it's worth it, but it still prevents that secondary market being an option.
Got it. Okay.
Then wasn't there one other thing, Yoni, with when there was an issue with the lock jewel being able to a lot of people
Mining.
thought of it as like
Mining
a,
of block jewel, yeah. So
That
that's
was a
one.
simpler fix.
can you
though.
can you explain the
Well,
problem real quick before and like
yes.
what that created as a
Yes.
result of the problem, and then dive into what the solution was?
Yeah, so basically what the deal was using that transfer all function. People could, so actually the mining quest allows you to send heroes to mine your own locked balance, and then you get those tokens as liquid tokens. So the rate of it is very controlled. It's not super high, but you can actually mine your own locked balance to unlock some of them early. It should be down a little bit lower under gameplay, and then quests if you want to hit the mining quest, the math equations there and all that fun stuff. But so that's what the mining quest does. The way that the mining quest works is when you start the mining quest, it looks at your locked balance. When you finish the mining quest, it looks at your locked balance. So what people were doing was they were actually going and saying, okay, I'm going to start this mining quest on this wallet. Then I'm going to transfer my balance to this wallet. I'm going to start a mining quest. I'm going to transfer it to this wallet, start a mining quest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as long as they circled that balance back to the first wallet by the time that quest finished, it counted. And then they would just keep it going in that circle. So essentially they were able to mine on multiple accounts rather than on one at a time. All of that being said, we put out the numbers when we fixed it back in March or April, which I can go find them if we want. But the impact of that has been massively overblown by some people. It was a infinitesimally small percentage comparative to the grand total. Like it really was not the massive breaking impact that it was made out to be, which is why we put those numbers out so that people could see, hey, we're not downplaying this. Like, here's the actual amount of jewel that was unlocked using this method. Here's the amount of jewel that's unlocked naturally every day. There's really not, like, it's not a massive difference. That being said, the fix that we ended up implementing for that is twofold. One, we put it into place to where when you transfer locked jewel, whether you send it or received it, and actually not locked jewel because locked jewel doesn't exist anymore, locked jade or crystal, when you transfer locked tokens, whether you send it or receive it, your wallet has a 72-hour cooldown. Also, when you do the transfer all function, it calls to our quest core contract, and if you have a mining quest, it is canceled. So we've kind of double protected it now to say, like, you're not even getting the one quest finished if you do this, but also there's no way to just bounce it from wallet to wallet to wallet to wallet because of that 72-hour cooldown. One last thing, sorry, it's a little bit off topic, but it's on the lock topic. One last thing I want to throw out there because I feel like I should. In DeFi, actually, no, not in DeFi, in crypto, There is no trust in Web3. It's that simple. Player-to-player transactions always have a risk associated with them. You do not know who is on the other side, and you do not know what they are going to send you or not going to send you. Always be careful when you're doing player-to-player transactions. But one thing that we saw with the lock jewel stuff, which is part of the reason like that I'm so opposed to it, is because I saw people just losing and getting cheated, was not only people just running off with lock jewel, which absolutely happened, but also using escrow services where the escrow person made a mistake. Because one thing that is set up unique about the transfer all function, there's no split. You can't send partial locked. So whatever your locked balance is, that whole balance is going. Well, if your escrow person makes a mistake and has you and someone else send their locked balance to the same account, now it's one balance.
And he can run away with it. Yeah.
And well, he can run away with it, but also even if they had already found buyers, so you had 1,000, I had 10,000, you had a buyer for your 1,000, I had a buyer for my 10,000. Well, now there's 11,000. So unless one of those buyers is willing to buy all 11,000 and then we split the purchase, you're just done. You know, that's done. And we saw people with like $1 million deals get blown up by an escrow service because the deal was never even legitimate. So always exercise caution in crypto when dealing player to player. Like an individual is not an escrow service. There are escrow contracts. At least use an escrow contract, because an individual is still subject to the same mistakes or malicious acts as anybody else.
Got it. Cool.
Thank you for.
Did you have any more questions around?
Yeah. I really just want to wrap it up and talk about something fun after all of that. So I did notice like you guys have like on the pets, for example. I want to know like what DeFi Kingdom's inspiration was, because it kind of feels like it came a little bit from Pokemon, a little bit from Dragon Quest, early, these pixelated, early late 90s, early 2000s Game Boy types of games, right? This kind of looks like a Piplup for you Pokemon fans. So I want to know like where the inspiration from designing of the game came from.
A little bit of everywhere.
When you put a bunch of artists in a group and give a singular idea, it doesn't matter how specific you get. There's a lot of freedom and there's a lot of room, and the pets particularly were kind of
free
a lot of just like run with it.
One thing that's really cool with the pets is on the bottom right, if you click the little page flip icon, it'll actually, not only does it give you a little bit of lore, or actually, yeah, the flip all works as well. Not only it gives you a little bit of lore about the pet, but it also actually, each one has the artist that made it. So it's
that's pretty
or no, actually, I'm sorry, it's not on the card back, it's in the tooltip on the top right. My fault. I'm too many things in my head.
Is it
hit flip all again to go back to the front of them?
Let me go back to it. Pet catalog. Okay.
Yeah, and so click the little eye in the top left.
Got it.
And then it will actually tell you not only a little bit about the
because they all have a little bit of lore.
They all have a little bit of lore, right? But like this one,
that's pretty cool. You put the artist name and a little bit about it.
The artist name, who wrote the lore. So the pets are really where our artists' personalities have been able to shine through, because there's so many possible pets that they were pretty much told, like, make stuff you like and then we'll narrow it down from there. As far as the overall game itself, I would say a lot of Final Fantasy influence. I think Dragon Quest would show through as well. We're all, the entire team is a whole bunch of nerds, and so
I'm a nerd myself. That's why I noticed this. So that's
we pull from every game we've ever played.
Some RuneScape in there.
RuneScape. Half of my suggestions come from Ultima Online, which is I think a more niche game, but man, it was fun. But yeah, the pet art especially. Like, I'm a super big fan of our pets. Just
there's also a lot of pets. Like,
there's a lot.
You're seeing some of the first ones that were ever hatched, but I remember still the day that one of the main artists at the time literally just shared in a team meeting his screen that had every pet that he had designed so far in a group standing for like a photo.
Yep.
And some of them get strange and
We're
there's
lucky. We have phenomenal pixel artists, and I think actually, if you click on that eye, I believe their names are actually hyperlinks as well to
Right, so like probably Twitter or something. Yeah, their Twitter account.
Yep. So you can actually go check them out and see like other stuff that they have worked on or are working on or whatever the case may be. But that to me is super cool, and I'm a really really big fan of our pets, and it was just such a cool opportunity to let our artists shine. Like there's not a whole lot of guidelines. Start making stuff and then we'll pick out what makes it, but it let them really express their creativity in a whole new way, and that was really cool because we really do
yeah.
have
And the
just
pets, you can see some of the like leading to some of the next ideas within our game, like some of the bonuses tailoring. You
yeah
know, that's not something that's
woodworking.
in the game right now, but obviously it's something that will be in the game,
Got it.
equipment, quests. There's nothing you can't think MMO wise that we haven't thought about how to incorporate it or bring it.
Just
And then there's of course like fishing and mining. These are bonuses that
that's a good
the
pet right
pets
there.
have.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very cool.
anytime I look at a dragon, I immediately gravitate towards it. So
Right?
So if you flip that one, you should be able to see those three icons are showing forging, armor smithing, and a combat bonus. So even things that aren't quite out yet, there's a lot of things that are integrated piece by
That-
piece with the plan in mind of
rolling it out.
having it affect something
Yep.
else.
Very cool. Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, I want to start wrapping things up here. But really, to end this whole thing, I really want to ask you guys both a question, which is other than buying the tokens, what are you currently doing to invest in the future of DeFi Kingdoms yourself?
Work wise or like in game wise?
In game, do you have any strategies that you're implementing right now? I want to get into some of the details.
So I am a PvE junkie. Like that's my thing. I want to go dungeon crawling. I don't care about fighting other people. I want to go dungeon crawling. So PvE will not come until after PvP, which PvP is currently in the works. We've started dropping some alpha on it as well. So if anybody's interested, you can check that out. Twitter or Medium will have the latest. But my strategy currently is I'm working on building up some heroes to like be ready for PvP, but really what I want is to be able to test out as many heroes through PvP as possible to start building my PvE squad. So trying out different abilities, different skills, that kind of thing, so that I can get a feel for, okay, this ability and this ability would work really well together if I was in this situation PvE wise. So that's my strategy currently, because I just want to go dungeon crawling. I don't care about fighting other people. Y'all can win. I just need to test out my builds. So that's where I'm at right now. Is I am stoked for dungeon crawling.
Cool. Risen, what about you?
Very different, but we've always been very different in that aspect. So I've gone through different stages. Like he mentioned that Twitter issue that I had at one point. I went on a summoning spree and I think I summoned almost 300 heroes in a row. And then I also have a problem with giving stuff away. So I gave away like 250 of them. So I stopped myself from doing that and I started focusing on there is mathematically like there's only so many heroes you can have on a certain thing like mining for the amount of time that it takes. You can run them in queue, but there's a certain amount of miners that you basically get the best benefit from. And once I hit those numbers, I started replacing my heroes individually with heroes that were better suited for each of their questing capabilities, and then either was leveling them myself, or also I always keep an eye out for higher level heroes specifically that have high levels in whatever their skills attribute to. So I'm trying to get basically the most efficient mining team, the most efficient guarding team, fishing team, so that I can have those on every realm that we do and run my quests on a clock that basically provide me the best return. I want that efficiency. Um, so I'm constantly looking at if there's a replacement on my roster that I can try and do. And it also prevents me from constantly growing the amount or giving them away needlessly. So that is currently my strategy. I am a big fan also of the names. Uh, so there's a couple heroes that I've bought or held on
Where do
to
you buy heroes
regardless.
here?
The tavern.
The tavern. Okay.
Yeah, there's heroes that I've bought or held on to that I've summoned purely because I just think their names are hilarious and I just want to hold on to them forever.
The agent is the one you want. Yep. And then buy heroes. And then you can see everything for sale.
Yeah. So with our hero selling, it gets down to the detail of you can search for certain level stats, level heroes, stamina, individual stats,
You
or
couldn't name
even the
what you're right there
capability.
on that night. I don't know what it is, but it's a great name.
So there's just certain things that like really scratch that old D&D itch. Like certain names just sound like
Mhm.
badass, and I want them, and certain of them are uh, just hilarious.
So these strategies that you guys are going to be using, are those strategies that you feel like are going to increase the amount of potential passive income you can create from this game, or what's the intention behind those strategies?
Mine personally is just for the enjoyment of the game. Like, obviously, I hope to also make a return from the game always. But, I look at it as I've spent a lot more money on a lot worse games. Uh, Theoretically, I guess, technically, because we don't have to.
Skins.
But I look at it as like I want to play the game for fun. I want to enjoy playing it. Hopefully I can make a return at the same time. That would be great. But my main object is like I logged a disgusting number of hours in Ultima Online. I logged a disgusting number of hours in World of Warcraft. I plan to log a disgusting number of hours in DeFi Kingdoms. That's really my thing. Is I just want to play.
In the same aspect, mine's the same reason. There's all different ways to play video games or any type of game. We both play Magic the Gathering. We build decks very differently. I like things to work with the best value possible. So for me, the fun is trying to perfect that return without actually being worried about the actual return. I want the machine. I want the perfect machine. So that's fun for me and what I kind of keep searching for. Um,
Gotcha.
same basic principle, just two different ways of going about it, which there's plenty of people that are in our game that have chased aesthetic features, rare genetics, names, abilities, all different types of things. And as we launch into more detail, like he pointed you to Twitter and some of the leaks that we've kind of put out about combat, that's just going to get more. There's just more capabilities for people to obsess over specific things. You're going to try and want to get your archer with a certain ability or a certain, item, whatever it may be. All of those are still fun. They're just fun for different people for different reasons.
And that's where also we're going to have a very robust crafting system. So that's where like questing will never be dead, because you're going to need materials in order to do the crafting. So there's a lot of different aspects for what different people want to do. And if you are somebody who, like Risen, enjoys getting like the machine going of questing, yeah, you're going to be able to make stuff or sell stuff. And that there'll be players who are crafting and there'll be players who are buying from the crafters, and that's how it's meant to be.
Awesome.
So
Cool.
it sounds like the end game really is just to keep growing and keep playing and keep developing and to keep making the game more fun, right? Like
Forever.
there really is no, because a lot of people are saying, what is the end goal of crypto, or what is the end goal of this project? And like to have an end goal means like, okay, what do you do once you achieve that, right?
Right.
And then what? So
We don't plan on stopping.
Yeah, I mean, we chose a style game that kind of allows us to, if I could do this for the next 50 years, that'd be fantastic. That would be ultimate goal would be to play and help build and talk about a video game, MMO, pixel art style
I
that
just
I
want
could.
more DLCs than WoW. That's all it is.
but that's
Yeah.
we can keep, there's so many directions in this. We could literally 20x the size of our team and develop for the next 25 years and not run out of direction of where we could go with an MMO. There's just not an end to what is capable and possible. It's just a matter of, can we provide it quick enough, feeling out and taking the users suggestions and making sure that it hits whatever their needs are, scratches that itch for them, and keeps it fun and entertaining.
Awesome. Well, this has been awesome, guys. I've really enjoyed this conversation. We've definitely well overextended our welcome with you guys, I'm sure. 2.5 hours
Not
in.
at all.
But this has been an incredible conversation. So I just kind of want to wrap things up real quick. So if you're still on this call and you're watching with us, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you're watching it, want to let you guys know that we're Blockchain Insight Group, and we go by Big Crypto for short. We host different innovators, developers, builders, and investors in the Web3 space all the time on calls like this for our community that is hosted inside of Discord. Our mission is to be that flashlight that you can bring into the Web3 cave that is incredibly dark. So, because Web3 is our full-time job, and we understand it can't be everybody's full-time job. So that's why we're here, to really help you guys with navigating this arena that we're all inside of right now. And we also have our Big Crypto Accelerator program, which is a one-to-one coaching program that is built specifically to take anybody from the earliest of beginners in blockchain that doesn't even understand blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, any of that stuff, and build them up into being complete experts that can navigate the DeFi space and earn passive income by staking and liquidity providing, while even playing games like DeFi Kingdoms, so that you can feel confident in investing in crypto and not feel like you're gambling. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This has been an incredible call full of a ton of alpha with DeFi Kingdoms and really insight into Web3 gaming as a whole. So I'm definitely going to be rewatching this one myself, because I'm sure there's a lot of little small things that I didn't pick up on that are really pivotal for the entire Web3 gaming space moving forward. So thank you guys, and I hope you all have an amazing night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you guys.